I still have the note in a freezer bag in my desk drawer. The part that keeps bothering me is how calm the handwriting looked. This was November 2021, and I was in Tucumcari, New Mexico, for a 2-day equipment job at a water treatment plant about 20 minutes outside town. I was 34 then, working as a field service engineer, and most of my travel was boring in the most forgettable way possible. Cheap coffee, long roads, hotel soap that smelled like lemon, and absolutely nothing else. That night, a freezing rain had started just after sunset, and the interstate was slick enough that I didn't want to risk driving farther for a better hotel. The place I ended up at was called the Blue Mesa Motor Lodge. It had an old, glowing vacancy sign, an empty ice machine by the stairs, and that sour, clean smell old motels get when they've used bleach for years to cover cigarette smoke. The woman at the front desk was named Janice. Late 50s, glasses on a chain, voice like she'd been awake too long. She checked me into room 2014 and apologized twice for the heater noise before I'd even gone upstairs. I remember the room clearly because I still think about it more than I want to. Floral bedspread, brown carpet with darker patches near the bathroom, a wall heater that clicked every few minutes like someone tapping a spoon against a pipe, and between my bed and the little round table, there was a connecting door to the next room. That by itself didn't bother me. I've stayed in enough hotels to know those doors exist. But the deadbolt on that inside door felt loose when I checked it. Not broken exactly, just soft, like it caught half a second later than it should have. There were scratch marks around the brass plate too, thin silver lines in the paint, like somebody had messed with a screwdriver more than once. I noticed it, then I ignored it. That's the part I keep replaying, how easy it was to ignore. I showered, answered 2 work emails, and ate a microwaved burrito I'd bought at a gas station. Around 10:40, I was sitting on the bed watching some local news channel with the volume low when I heard the first sound from the other side of the connecting door. A light scratch. Not a knock, not footsteps, just a dry, careful scraping noise, low to the floor. I muted the TV and listened. Nothing. I told myself it was pipes, old building, cheap door, wind pressure. Then it happened again. I got up and crouched near the door. There was no light coming from under it, and I couldn't hear a TV next door. Just the heater clicking behind me and rain tapping against the window. I should explain something. I'm not brave in these situations. I'm not one of those people who immediately investigates. I'm actually the opposite. I look for the easiest explanation because I want one. I want there to be a normal answer so badly that I'll usually pick it first. So I grabbed the folded receipt Janice had given me at check-in and slid one corner of it halfway under the connecting door. My thinking was stupidly simple. If there was airflow, maybe that was causing the sound. If the paper moved, fine. Mystery solved. I went into the bathroom to brush my teeth. I was in there maybe 3 minutes. When I came back, the receipt was gone. I stood there for a second, toothbrush in my hand, staring at the strip of carpet where it had been. I actually laughed once out loud. Not because it was funny, because that was the moment my brain was still trying to help me. Maybe the paper had slipped through. Maybe I'd shoved it farther than I thought. Then, while I was still looking at the floor, the receipt slid back out, slowly. Not tossed, not pushed fast, just eased under the door until it stopped against my shoe. My hands started shaking before I even picked it up. On the blank backside in neat blue ink were 7 words. The door isn't locked right on your side. I called the front desk immediately. Janice answered on the second ring, and when I read her the note, there was a pause long enough that I checked to make sure the call hadn't dropped. Then she said, "Sir, room 215 is out of order." I asked what that meant. She said the shower valve had been leaking and no one was supposed to be in there. No key had been issued. I remember my mouth going dry. I asked her if she was sure. She said, "Do not open that door. I'm sending Leo." Leo was maintenance. Big guy, gray sweatshirt, smelled like machine oil and coffee. He came up with Janice maybe 6 minutes later. I had the chain on the main door and didn't let them in until I saw both faces through the gap. I showed them the note. Leo tried my side of the connecting door and frowned. The deadbolt turned, but the strike plate didn't catch all the way unless he lifted the door a little by the knob. "Old frame," he said. "Humidity." Janice didn't say anything. Then Leo opened room 215 with a master key. I stayed in my doorway while he and Janice went in. I could hear their footsteps, then silence, then Leo saying, "That's weird." When they let me look, room 215 was empty. No bag, no coat, no food. The bedspread was still tucked tight like housekeeping had done it, but the connecting door on the 215 side was standing open about 3 inches. The room smelled damp, like wet plaster. Leo said maybe a guest had gone in earlier, before they marked it out of service. Janice said nobody had. Leo noticed the window screen in 215 had a slit near the bottom corner. That should have been enough for me to leave right then. It wasn't. Janice offered to move me to room 108 near the office. I agreed. I packed fast, and I was nervous enough that I left my phone charger plugged in behind the nightstand in 214. I didn't realize that until after I was in 108, at 2:16 in the morning. My phone buzzed. Unknown number. There was one attached image. It was a photo of the inside of room 214. My charger was sitting on the bathroom sink, neatly coiled like someone had picked it up for me. The caption underneath said, "You left this, Daniel." My first name was only on the check-in receipt. I felt that cold drop in my stomach so hard I thought I might throw up. I ran to the office barefoot with my phone in my hand. Janice looked at the picture and went pale. She called the police. 2 officers came out just after 2:40. I showed them the note, the text, the number. One of them, Officer Mendez, asked if I had told anyone I was moving rooms. I said no. They searched both rooms again. Room 214 was empty. Room 215 was empty. But Officer Mendez found the top hinge pin on the connecting door in 215 had been lifted halfway out. There were fresh tool marks around it. In the bathroom tank, they found a flathead screwdriver wrapped in a hand towel. The official explanation was simple. Somebody had gotten into the out-of-order room through the cut screen and had tried to work the connecting door open. A transient, a thief, someone looking for an easy room to sleep in. That should have made me feel better. It didn't, because while the officers were downstairs taking my statement, Janice printed the key log from the front desk system. The messages were always polite. That was the worst part. This started in June 2022, when I was living in Milwaukee in a 3rd-floor apartment in Bayview with my roommate, Mia. She worked nights at St. Luke's, and I worked remote for a marketing company, so I spent a lot of time alone in that apartment with the windows open, listening to buses groan past the corner and the bar downstairs, dumping bottles into a bin around midnight. I was 26, and I posted the same kind of harmless stuff everybody posts without thinking. Coffee, record store shelves, rain on the windshield, my sneakers at a crosswalk, not influencer stuff, not even public most of the time, just little stories for friends. No geotags, no live location, no here now captions. That mattered to me later because I needed to know I hadn't made it easy. The first message came on a Thursday at 6:12 p.m. It was from an account I didn't recognize. No profile photo, no posts. The username was just a string of numbers. The image attached was a photo of the table I had been sitting at in a coffee shop on KK Avenue about 6 minutes earlier. My cup was gone. My chair was empty. Under the image, it said, "Missed you by 5 minutes." I remember feeling a quick little jolt, then laughing it off. Someone from the shop, a friend messing with me, some guy who saw my story and thought he was being clever. I blocked the account. At 7:03, a second account messaged me. This time the photo was the crosswalk outside the pharmacy I'd stopped at after coffee. You could see the walk signal counting down in the corner, "Missed you by 5 minutes." I didn't laugh that time. When Mia got home around 11:30, I showed her both messages while she stood in the kitchen eating cereal straight from the box. She frowned and said, "Did you post these while you were still there?" I said yes. She looked at me for a second and said, "Okay, lock your account anyway." That was my first rational explanation. Somebody local was just following my stories too closely. So I changed my password, turned on 2-factor authentication, made the account private, removed old followers I didn't know well. I even checked the app permissions on my phone because by then I had convinced myself maybe some update had re-enabled location sharing. For one full day, nothing happened. Then Saturday afternoon, while I was waiting for the Green Line train downtown, I got another message. Different blank account, different photo. This one showed the exact platform bench I had just left, with the electronic sign in frame. The timestamp on the sign read 2:41, I had boarded at 2:37. The message said 4 minutes this time. My hands went numb. That night I called my friend Owen because he works in cybersecurity and is the kind of person who actually knows what all the privacy settings on your phone do. He came over with takeout and spent an hour going through everything with me. He didn't find spyware. He didn't find some hidden app. He didn't find an AirTag in my bag or car. What he did find was worse in a different way. He said, "He may not be tracking you digitally at all." I asked what that meant. He pulled up my story archive and started pointing things out. In one photo from the coffee shop, the curved back of a spoon reflected the street number backwards. In a short video from the station, you could hear the automated stop announcement in the background. In a bookstore clip, a bus route number was visible in the window reflection behind me for half a second. He looked at me and said, "He's reading the background. He doesn't need your GPS. You're giving him tiny pieces, and he knows the city well enough to build the route." That made me feel sick in a way the messages hadn't yet, because it meant he was close enough to use what I posted almost immediately. I stopped posting that night. No stories, no photos, nothing. 2 days later, I got a message anyway. It was a picture of the laundromat I used 3 blocks from my apartment. My blue detergent bottle was visible through the window beside machine 14. No story this time. Still missed you. I actually sat down on the laundromat floor when I read that. My legs gave out. Mrs. Varga, the owner, came over from behind the counter because she thought I was fainting. When I showed her the message, she got very quiet and said there had been a gray Mazda parked across the street for almost an hour. She remembered because the driver never got out and never once looked down at a phone. He just watched the door. That was the first time someone else noticed something too. I filed a police report that night. I still have the report number in my notes app. The officer who took it asked the usual questions. Ex-boyfriend, coworker, neighbor, delivery driver, anybody with a reason. I kept trying to force one name to make sense. Derek, maybe. We had dated for 8 months, but he'd moved to Arizona the year before, and even saying his name out loud felt thin and wrong. It didn't fit. Mia took it more seriously than I did at first. She started checking the hallway before opening our apartment door. She kept the chain latched even when I was expecting her home. I started sleeping with my phone under my pillow and waking up every time a car door shut outside. Owen suggested a test. He said if the person was using my digital trail, we could feed him the wrong one. So the next Friday night, Mia used my account from her phone and posted a story from a 24-hour diner on the east side. Neon sign. Coffee mug. Her hand in the corner with my bracelet on. I stayed in our apartment with every light off except the stove clock. For 43 minutes, nothing happened. Then my phone buzzed. New message, new blank account. The image attached was not the diner. It was our building's 3rd-floor hallway, taken from the far end, near the fire door. You could see our apartment door. You could see the old dent in the frame where a previous tenant had hit it with furniture. The text under it said, "Wrong girl." I stopped breathing for a second. Not metaphorically, literally. My chest locked up. Mia came home so fast she beat the police there. Our building manager pulled the stairwell camera footage. At 10:52 p.m., a man in a dark cap and hoodie came in behind another tenant carrying a paper grocery bag. He kept his face down. He went up the stairs and disappeared off camera on our floor. At 11:07, he came back down without the bag. The police searched the hallway, the laundry room, the basement storage cages. Nothing. One officer did a quick walkthrough of our apartment and said it looked clear. That should have been the end of it for that night. But while Mia was in the kitchen talking to the officer, I walked toward my bedroom to pack an overnight bag so I could stay somewhere else. My phone buzzed in my hand. I looked down. "I'm in the place you'll be in 10 seconds. I stopped outside my bedroom door. I didn't move. The apartment was suddenly so quiet I could hear the refrigerator motorcycle off. Then, from inside my room, I heard a tiny sound. Not a footstep. Not a voice fabric shifting. Like someone adjusting their weight against a wall. I backed up so fast I hit the hall table and knocked Mia's keys to the floor. The police came in hard that time. They cleared the room, the closet, under the bed, even the narrow space between the dresser and the wall. Nobody. But my bedroom window opened onto the back fire escape, and the screen had been lifted out and set back into place crooked. On the inside sill, there was a black scuff mark from a shoe. Under my bed, the dust had been wiped into a clean oval shape, like something or someone had been there long enough to leave an outline. I moved out 2 days later. Months after that, Owen went back through the screenshots and the camera still from our hallway. He zoomed in on the man's sleeve and said there looked like there might be a company logo under the hoodie. Not clear enough to read. Just a block of color and lettering. That stayed with me because 3 weeks before the first message, an internet contractor had spent almost an hour in our apartment rewiring a wall jack in my room. He had seen the fire escape window. He had seen where my desk was. He had seen how the bedroom door didn't close clean unless you pushed it the last inch. The company said they couldn't identify anyone from the still. I live in a different building now in a different part of the city. I barely post anything. When I do, it's hours later, sometimes the next day. But last December, I came home from work and found a blank email in an old folder I don't even use anymore. There was no text, just one attached photo. It was the mirror in my new building's. I deleted the files, all of them, every frame from that night. And then I bought a new camera, because I couldn't look at the old one without my hands starting to shake. I want to explain what happened as clearly as I can, because I've told this story twice before, and both times I watched the person listening decide I had either misremembered or was exaggerating. I wasn't. I know what the photographs showed. I know it was in frame 312. I've been doing astrophotography for about 6 years. Night sky stuff, long exposures, time-lapse sequences. Nothing complicated. You set the camera up, you go to sleep, the camera does its work, and in the morning you have a few hundred frames of stars moving across the sky in a slow, perfect arc. It's meditative. It's one of the reasons I go out alone. This was August 2022. I drove up to a campsite in the Cascade foothills, a spot I'd used twice before, remote enough that there's no light pollution but accessible enough that the drive is under 2 hours from the city. I arrived around 7 p.m., while it was still light, set up my tent in the usual clearing, about 40 feet from a tree line, ate dinner, checked my gear, set my camera on its tripod facing northeast, and programmed the intervalometer to take 1 frame every 90 seconds. That would give me roughly 240 frames over 6 hours. There was no one else at the site. I'd passed no other cars on the access road. The ranger station I'd stopped at on the way in had one person working, a young guy named Cole who stamped my permit and told me it had been quiet all week. I went to sleep around 10. The night was still. I mean genuinely still. No wind. No animal sounds after the first hour or so. I noticed the quiet before I fell asleep. It struck me as slightly unusual, but I was tired from the drive and I let it go. I slept straight through until just before sunrise. Around 5:20 a.m., I felt fine when I woke up. Groggy, but fine. I made coffee on my camp stove and sat outside watching the sky lighten. Everything looked exactly as I'd left it. My camera was on the tripod where I'd placed it. The tent was behind me, its door still zipped the way I'd left it. The tree line was still. Normal. I packed up, drove home, and didn't look at the footage until that evening. I loaded the files into my editing software, 287 frames in total, which was slightly fewer than I'd expected. But I assumed there'd been a brief power interruption to the intervalometer at some point. I ran the sequence as a time-lapse first, just to check the overall arc. Stars moving left to right, tent visible in the lower left corner of most frames, tree line along the right edge. And then I saw it in the full sequence. Frame 211 through 227, roughly a 24-minute window between 2:31 a.m. and 2:55 a.m. There was something in the right side of the frame that wasn't there before and wasn't there after. I paused the sequence. I went back to frame 211, a shape. Standing at the edge of the tree line, human in proportion upright, roughly the height of an adult, standing completely still. I could not make out any detail. The exposure time in the low light turned it into a dark mass against the slightly lighter darkness of the trees behind it. But the silhouette was unmistakably a person. I went through frame by frame. 211, shape at the tree line. Frame 212, shape, same position. Frames 213 through 218, shape moves. Slowly, toward the camera, toward the tent. In frame 224, it is approximately 15 feet from my tent, from me, from where I was sleeping. Frame 225. It is close enough that the shape begins to clarify slightly. Arms, shoulders. The suggestion of a head tilted slightly downward, looking at something near the ground. Frame 226. The shape is standing directly beside the camera. Frame 227. The frame is partially obscured. Something is covering a portion of the lens. At the bottom right corner of the image, blurred by proximity, pale and soft, is a hand. Fingers slightly curved, close enough that the lens has captured the texture of the skin. Frame 228, the shape is gone. The lens is unobstructed. The clearing is empty. I sat at my desk for a long time without moving. Then I went outside and checked my car. Locked, fine, drove to my neighbor's house. Marcus, who knows I go on these solo trips and always tells me I'm going to get myself into trouble, and showed him the frames on my laptop. He looked at them for a long time without speaking. Then he said, "Did you check the tent stakes?" I hadn't thought to. I went home and looked at the photos I'd taken when I first set up camp. I always photograph my setup for reference. I compared them to photos I'd taken when I woke up. The tent stakes were in different positions, not dramatically different, but measurably different. The front left stake had moved approximately 8 inches from where I'd driven it into the ground. I don't know if that means what I think it means. Maybe the ground shifted in the night, thermal changes, soil contraction. I've told myself that many times. I've also told myself that what I saw in those frames was a lens artifact, a camera malfunction, pareidolia, the brain seeing human shapes where there are none. I've tried every rational explanation I can build, but I keep returning to one thing I cannot explain away. In frame 225, the shape is looking down at something near the ground. In my setup photographs from the previous evening, I had placed my water bottle on the ground directly beside the tripod, to the left of the right front leg. When I woke up, the water bottle was to the right of the left rear leg, 4 feet away from where I'd left it. I never touched it during the night. I never heard anything. I slept through all of it, and whatever moved through my campsite while I was asleep, whatever stood beside my tent, touched my camera lens, looked at my things, it never made a sound loud enough to wake me. I haven't been back to that site. I haven't camped alone since August 2022. I still do astrophotography, but now I only shoot from my backyard, with the lights on inside the house.